What is going on YouTube? Andrew Miller, Shane Black from hook'emheadlines.com. We're coming back at y'all today with kind of a look at the final week of spring ball. I think we have, what is it, four practices left before the spring game. It's been pretty fun spring to cover so far for the Longhorns. Just a ton of positions that have got a lot of standouts, a lot of depth. And just a lot of talent across the board. All these coaches, the way they've been able to stockpile talent, really stock up the cupboard here in the last couple of years is starting to pay dividends. You're starting to see positions that, just a couple of years ago were considered underachieving for the Longhorns defensive line, pretty much the entirety of the defensive backfield, wide receiver, at times running back, at least outside of Bijan Robinson. You're starting to see these positions really become points of strength, even where there's roster turnover. And, I think that's a sign of this program taking the next step as we head into the final year in the Big 12 and then the move to the SEC. I think that is one of my large and long-term impact takeaways from the spring so far. But, more specifically, there's a lot of competitive underclassmen. We've also seen more upperclassmen kind of make some really major strides this spring than we've seen in years past. Guys that might have been on portal watch in previous years or, might have seen getting passed up on the depth chart by younger players and really just not get developed. The David Bendas, the Keaton Crawfords of the world. It's nice to see these sort of developments happen from both the under and upperclassmen. What are some of your thoughts so far on spring?
Yeah, I think it's been a really fun spring to cover. We're getting news and notes coming out about, pretty much the whole depth chart, everything from the progression of Quinn Ewers to the guys you mentioned right there, David Benda and Keaton Crawford, who have been around the 40 for a while and are really starting to come into their own and given some first team opportunities. But on top of that, a lot of early enrollees standing out as well. So I think it's just been a really good mix. I take a little caution with some of this, especially listening to Sark in press conferences, because he's not going to go out there and bash any guys by name at this point, especially with the portal these days. So you're going to hear way more about the good than you are the bad. So that does give me, a little bit of caution just in, I'm not going to come out here and say Texas is having the best spring practice of all time. The country should be on watch. But for the most part, everything that you see and hear is promising and it is exciting because, like you mentioned, the growth is happening all throughout the roster at every class level. Guys going into their fourth year and guys who've been on campus for 2 months. So I think in general that's very exciting. And
it is nice to hear even Sark talking about the importance of the spring game from the perspective of, really getting some of those spring game reps to a lot of these younger guys or, maybe guys that are trying out new positions. I think there's a lot of players that are going to be put to the test in that sort of situation just because while this team does have a lot of returning starters on both sides of the ball, you're losing enough key guys on each side of the ball, and there's been enough roster movement that I would say I'm still not perfectly certain how to gauge each side of the ball. So for the spring game and really for the final week of the spring, this is a good segue. For me at least, there's 5 or 10 players that come to mind. I'm sure a similar number for you, if not more, of guys that, really need to leave it all out on the practice field and at DKR on Saturday, next Saturday. Guys that not only have something to prove, but that, really need to head into summer workouts and fall camp with, some momentum and some form of leaving the coaching staff with a positive impression of their performance. I digress. I think most of the guys that fit into that bucket for me are on the defense. How about you?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I would look on the defense, especially to fill out depth. But there's certainly a lot of battles. There is at the running back position. I mean, if you just want to dive right into it, and briefly touch on the offense, because I think it's been a big spring for Jaydon Blue. I mean, just the past 3 months with him, potentially entering the portal. He scrubbed his social media. We had the coverage of that back in January, and then he kind of got talked out of that, and now he's kind of been taking a lot of first team reps with Jonathan Brooks still recovering from hernia surgery and Keelan Robinson dealing with a muscle strain. It's been Blue, Baxter, and of course Savion Red moving over to the running back position. But I think in terms of like having a good statistical performance, Blue might be up there for like the most important, because obviously us fans are, or me specifically, I think the fan base is going to try to base it off one game when the coaches have been seeing what these guys can do in practice for a couple months. But I think it's going to be big for Blue's perception to the fan base, because obviously everyone wants to see CJ Baxter, the 5-star, get out there. And it seems like Blue's just kind of getting passed over. So I think he could do a lot for himself if he goes out on Saturday and has a really nice performance and, shows why he was a highly recruited 4-star player.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jaydon Blue is an interesting one for the running back room, because heading into the spring game, it feels like a lot of the noise is surrounding, like you said, CJ Baxter, but also Savion Red. Heard a ton about Red and just him getting really nothing but praise from the coaches this spring since he made the switch from slot receiver to running back. I think it's interesting that you mentioned like being a little cautionary with the way that you view expectations for a lot of these guys, and not get like kind of this spring, like the spring game colored lenses heading into the fall. A guy has a big spring game and then you expect him to be like a breakout player during the upcoming season. Because, Savion Red, he's gotten a lot of these, kind of Swiss Army knife type reps and looks in team drills and scrimmage settings this spring. But that's, you mentioned Keelan Robinson dealing with I don't know if it's a muscle strain or a sprain or what, but he's been limited for a long time now. And, I don't know how much of Red's increase in workload and this, the way he's being used in camp is, I'm sure a lot of it's because Keelan's been absent. But, I have to give credit where it's due to Savion, because, he's getting, I believe now, 3rd or 4th team reps. I think the pecking order at this point is Jonathan Brooks 1, Jaydon Blue 2, CJ Baxter 3, Savion Red 4. Savion Red was actually like kind of in the 5 or the 6 hole there for a second, but behind like Kai Woods, some former walk-ons. And again, keep in mind that's without Keelan Robinson in that pecking order. So, Jaydon Blue, like it's really easy to get him lost in the mix here, but he's going to be a really important running back for Texas in 2023. Just, if you're looking at Texas's like every down running backs, it's really Jonathan Brooks, Jaydon Blue, and CJ Baxter. And, I think a lot of people are skeptical about Sark's confidence in Jonathan Brooks and how he fits this offensive scheme. If that is the case, then, that really heightens the importance of Jaydon Blue having a big season. So I like you bringing him up, because, we didn't see much action out of him last year. You mentioned the whole portal debacle with him a few months ago. I think it'll be interesting to see how he performs and, obviously continue to keep an eye on him throughout the offseason heading into the fall. A guy for me, if I'm sliding over one position group in the spring game to watch it's going to be DeAndre Moore. I think you could go DeAndre Moore or Jonte Cook, but, I've heard so much about Moore, just getting some great rep, like just looking great on his reps that he's been getting second team reps this spring. Heard a lot of good stuff about his route running ability, his hands, his consistency in practice, the way he's showing up on and off the field. Really sounds like he got down to business in the film room as well during the winter strength and conditioning program. So, it'll be interesting to see how he shows out and see if some of the hype is real, because, if he can show out in a spring game setting, that'll kind of help him take that next step to proving that, he really can handle kind of a bevy of live game reps this fall. There's some chatter right now that, while he's looking like a dude in the spring, maybe he's not ready and it might be a couple of years, but, if he can show he's ready now, the spring game's going to be the next time for him to prove that point.
Right. If we turn on the spring game and Jonte Cook is getting more run with the ones, and Moore really doesn't get run with the ones, he's all with the twos, but Moore has a better output, better statistical output, and looks more comfortable on the field. How do you then assess that? Because that shows me that Cook has been working with the ones if he then goes out and plays with the ones, but he's, maybe the third or fourth option in the receiving room when it comes to that first team. But then if Moore comes in with Maalik Murphy and he's like the top option of the second group, it's just kind of like this weird dichotomy that I was just curious on your take on that, because I think that there's a good chance that DeAndre Moore could come out on Saturday and have a really good game. And we've heard that Maalik Murphy has hit a couple deep balls in these spring practices, and I assume they're going to take a couple shots. So if Moore comes out and kind of lights it up and goes for like 4 for 100 or something like that, and Cook maybe has one catch, you think that's just the nature of how they're balanced and who they're playing with, or I just thought of that. So I don't know what your thoughts are there.
I guess before I dig into that, are you kind of on the school of thought that Jonte Cook will be with the first team? I know he's got first team reps here and there this spring, but I think he's mostly been with the second teamers behind.
Yeah. I think he's definitely like clearly probably the number 2X behind.
Yeah.
Worthy. But I think if you're looking at it, positionless football, like I think he is the fourth or fifth guy there, whereas DeAndre Moore is more like the seventh or eighth guy. So I guess my question would be, would you take any stock in if Cook runs with the ones, Moore doesn't, but Moore plays better? Does that affect your opinion on anything, on how they are going, maybe their perception going into the fall?
I don't know how much that would be a Moore versus Cook question, because I think Moore is going to be your slot guy, no matter what. And, Cook could operate out of the slot. He's more like that Xavier Worthy type where you really, maybe not on the boundary, but you could really put him anywhere else. I think if Jonte Cook is getting more reps than DeAndre Moore, but Moore is looking better, that to me probably shows that some level of confirmation of what a lot of people have been saying, where, Cook is able to ball out. He's getting more attention from the staff, whereas Moore probably can do this, but they're not ready to quite give him reps ahead of guys even if you're looking outside of the top 3 or 4 guys, that they're still probably more confident in guys like Casey Kane or Jonte Cook, kind of those 4th, 5th, 6th options than DeAndre Moore. I have heard at times still DeAndre Moore looking like a freshman. I think there was a pick it was one of the first 2 scrimmages of the spring where it kind of went right through his hands on a crossing route. You still take that with a grain of salt though. There's any guy is prone to a bad day in practice. Moore sounds like he's had a great spring so far. And I think if DeAndre Moore is able to go out there and ball out, against maybe a guy like Malik Muhammad or Terrence Brooks or someone like that, that would still speak a lot, or that would still say a lot to me that, he's still ready to make an impact. And that, I think it would also alleviate any remaining concerns that fans might have about depth at wide receiver. I don't know how many of those concerns remain with, how well A.D. Mitchell has settled in and, it's supposedly quick recovery so far of Isaiah Nayor. Things like that. Casey Kane's improvement the last few weeks. We've heard a lot of good things coming out of the wide receiver room, especially, results from Chris Jackson. So, I think for your question where, you could really look at it as okay, who's going to win reps over the other? But, I think if that is the case where they're both where, Cook is showing enough maturity to get reps with the ones during the spring game and Moore is balling out with the twos, I think that's, it'd be great if Cook is balling out with the ones, but I think that's almost best case scenario. So I hear you. I think that's the best way I could put that in my mind in terms.
I hear you. I think that makes sense. I think it. Quickly, I haven't gotten. Do you have any Brenen Thompson thoughts with running track or?
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't thought of that name in a little while. Not a ton, honestly. I mean, he's had a decent. I've heard that he's done pretty well in track this spring, but beyond that, I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think it definitely hurts him, but
I do too in a way. I mean, because he's either playing at field or slot, and I would hesitate to say he's even the second guy at either spot. So yeah, interesting. I don't know. I mean, he's gonna have to make some big moves during fall camp.
yeah,
Without a doubt.
yeah, I certainly don't knock him for doing it. He loves track and he's dang good at it, but I do think it could be a bit of a problem, especially with the two guys we just mentioned. You got these freshmen making strides. You mentioned Ryan Niblett. Like it's fierce competition for even like the second and third team reps. So,
I mean, to me, I just want to see the offensive line, like the interior offensive line, hold their own a little bit better. That's really all I would say for that. Otherwise, you mentioned Maalik Murphy. He's actually one of the names I was going to say as a player that I think has something to prove. I think he has the most to prove of any quarterback during the spring game. I know you mentioned him hitting some deep balls, and he's definitely had some flashes in camp and during the scrimmages, but it's been a revolving door between him and Arch Manning for the backup quarterback job. Coming into spring, I thought it was Maalik Murphy's job for the taking, but he's had continuous injury issues. He's still got a lot of refinement, still got a long way to go in terms of his development. And so, I think he needs to have a big spring game, not only for his own confidence, but also to, really prove that he can nail down that second team job in the quarterback room. That would be last mile fun.
Yeah, I agree. Just quick on Murphy, what I'd say is it's clear that Quinn Ewers is the number one guy here. And if something were to happen to Ewers during the regular season, the national media doesn't really, like the people that follow recruiting know who Maalik Murphy is. But if Ewers were to go down and Murphy were then to step in, like he's got to be ready and he's got to perform well immediately because everyone is going to be, even Texas fans, a lot of them are going to be, why isn't Arch in there? Why is this Maalik? So sneakily, he does have to, like you said, for confidence. I like that because he's got to prove to himself, not only to others, but to himself that he can go out and play and he deserves this second team job. I think he does have that confidence, but seeing it come to fruition in a spring game would certainly go a long way for him.
Yeah, I don't think Maalik's really ever been lacking for confidence, but yeah, I guess like you said, putting it all together out on the field and showing that he can, that he can really find that composure, that consistency in some sort of game setting. Because pretty much no live game reps under his belt yet, even in a spring game. So, do you have anything else for the offense?
No, I think bringing back 10 starters. It's going to be a lot of depth, kind of who fits in where type thing. So
sure,
that's a good sign.